SCP-008 is a prion, a misfolded protein that can cause healthy proteins to change their shape into that of the original prion, hence the infectious nature. SCP-008 exhibits 100% infectiousness and 100% lethality, with transmission occurring via exposed mucous membranes such as the mouth, eyes, nose, and genitals, and via body fluids such as semen, blood, saliva, and nasal mucus. SCP-008 exhibits no transmissivity through water and air. However, liquid and solid particles suspended in air or water may provide limited transmissivity. After exposure, flu-like symptoms such as coughing, excess mucus production, fever, and fatigue begin to occur between 1 and 3 hours. 8 hours after this point is where signs of brain damage begin, starting with insomnia and memory loss and ending at dementia. The subject will enter a comatose state 12 hours after this. The average time in which an infected subject can transmit SCP-008 as a living human being is 15 hours. After several hours, the subject will reanimate, exhibiting traits such as increased strength and endurance, resistance to starvation, and a hunger for human flesh. These traits have been disseminated into popular media as the zombie, as a safeguard against SCP-008. Numerous scenarios involving SCP-008 epidemics were simulated by the SCP Foundation Risk Assessment Bureau. The worst of these scenarios involves an outbreak nearby or within an airport. The particular airport that SCP-008 spreads from doesn't matter so long as the starting location is on a continent. Due to SCP-008 having 100% infectivity, the doubling rate of the pandemic is the same as the contact rate between people. In the early stages of an SCP-008 pandemic, the doubling rate could be as low as 1 every 5 hours and as high as 1 every 20 minutes. The transmission rate for any given person depends on many factors, such as employment and social activities. However, for the first 2 days of the pandemic, this rate is estimated at once per hour, with the doubling rate decreasing as the world becomes more aware of this pandemic. On the first day of the SCP-008 pandemic, if the pandemic starts with 1 person, then the number of infected by the end of the day would be around 32,000. However, if the pandemic starts with an individual with a very high transmission rate of about once every 20 minutes, this could make the number of infectees by the end of that day as high as 62,000. On the second day, at the same infection rate, the expected number of infectees is 2.13 billion. However, what would actually happen is that the entire city would be infected. Even if the doubling rate reduces to once every 2 hours, the expected number of infectees is 11.3 million, which is larger than most cities. At this point, the only way for SCP-008 to spread is to be transmitted between cities or nations. This can only occur through ground transport or air transport. On the first day, the number of infectees boarding planes will be effectively nil. However, on the second day, the number of infectees boarding planes will be about 900. Nevertheless, as thousands of people flood the hospitals of the pandemic origin, suffering from dementia among similar effects, the likely result is that the country that SCP-008 begins in will shut down their airport, if not their borders and harbours. Hence, the number of international transmissions could still be as high as 100, especially if the country isn't sufficiently prompt in limiting the spread of SCP-008. In the middle case scenario, with 100 cases of international transmission, the likeliest destinations are shown here in red. Additional possibilities if the worst case scenario occurs, which is 900 cases of transmission, are shown in orange. On the third day, the number of reanimated is expected to grow to 62,000. and the number of infectees worldwide could be as high as 90 million. The presence of reanimated will cause many nations to shut down their borders, airports and harbours, limiting further international spread, and in each area that SCP-008 spreads to, as many as 1,000 to 10,000 people could become infected. If swift and brutal military action is undertaken against the infectees and reanimated outside of the starting country, and if outside nations band together to euthanize and destroy the infectees in the original country, then the SCP-008 outbreak could have a disaster rating of sigma, which is 32 million to 1 billion dead, just like the Spanish flu. However, governments may be slow to take action, and military intervention may be insufficient to prevent the collapse of the original country and the production of millions of reanimated. By the end of Day 5, as many as 1 million infectees could be present in each location that SCP-008 spreads to. By the end of Day 7, many of the nations that SCP-008 has spread to could be facing collapse. Militaries and civilians dealing with any SCP-008 outbreak are not likely to be killed by the reanimated as a result of being eaten. The danger inherent with the reanimated is that they are highly infectious as a result of the necrotic skin tissue, as well as the possibility of transmission by blood splatter. This is compounded by the fact that the reanimated will seek out human life. As the second week draws on, infected nations will become increasingly depopulated and resources will be stretched increasingly thin. For the nations that SCP-008 is less likely to spread to, their survivability is dependent on a metric called defensivity. That is, the number of military personnel per kilometre of land borders. Out of all nations, the defensivity is shown here. However, to get the likely survivors, the countries very likely and less likely to get infected are grayed out. Of the remaining countries, the ones with the highest defensivity are North Korea, Iraq, Armenia and Pakistan, followed by Eritrea and Belarus, then Kuwait and Palestine. Another pool of survival candidates are islands. Examples of islands that could survive an SCP-008 outbreak include Iceland, New Zealand and Fiji, to name a few. Finally, some regions such as the Yukon Territory and Siberia are survival candidates due to their remoteness and low population densities. Most of these regions are also inhospitable to the reanimated, either due to low temperatures freezing undead tissue, high temperatures accelerating decomposition or dehydrating undead tissue, or rugged terrain blocking movement of the reanimated. Putting these factors together, the likeliest survival candidates are shown in dark green, with other candidates in light green. If all of these countries are depopulated to 50%, with the countries in grey almost entirely depopulated, then the number of survivors is expected to be about 600 million. This is about 8% of the human population, and so SCP-008 will have a disaster rating of gamma in the worst case scenario.